Hey there guys, it's Rich here from Newbie Prepping, and I'm here once again to talk about campfires. No matter what type of prepper you are, no matter what, you will need to know how to make a fire. It keeps you warm, it cooks your food, and it boils your water for distillation. It's an important skill for every prepper to have. And so in the collection of firewood and the processing, you want to know exactly what you're doing so that you can conserve your time, your energy, and your resources. Now, when I first started as a bushcraft prepper, I assumed that starting a fire would be easy. In Hollywood, they make it look extremely easy, but in reality, the heat needed for a fire to be established and keep itself alight is a lot more than you might think, and it takes a lot more skill and practice than you might think. But after doing a few overnighters and practicing my skills a little bit more, I think that I'm at a pretty decent level of fire making now. So the intention of this video is to show newbie preppers and maybe even beginner bushcrafters the exact type of wood that you need to collect, gather and process in order to fully utilize your time when you're making a campfire, so that you can skip out on the trial and error learning process that I went through. And if you want to see those trial and error and quite frankly cringe-worthy tries, there's going to be a playlist displayed at the end of this video that you can watch of me trying to make fires previously. But now I know the proper way of doing it, and that's what this video is for. I do want to say that starting a fire with an accelerant like barbecue oil or a firelighter, for example, it's not that hard, because those things cause a burn that's hot enough to start burning wood. The thing is, in a SHTF grid down survival situation, even if you're prepped with like 100 firelighters, what happens after you need to make fire number 101 and you've run out of your firelighters? Every prepper should know the more basic, primitive way of starting a fire for when they have expended all of their resources. And gathering and processing wood in this way that I'm about to show you is the best way to spend your time and energy, and it will achieve the best results in the shortest amount of time when trying to start a fire. So even though gathering and processing this wood can be quite tiring, quite taxing, it is definitely worth it. So here's the three main tools that you will need to help you make a fire. One here is an axe, one here is a knife, and probably your best friend, a folding saw. Now, I've seen some people argue against an axe because they say that cutting up logs using a folding saw will be way better use of your energy, and I totally agree with them. But as we'll go through, there is definitely a very important use for an axe. So in my opinion, even if it's a hatchet this size, a bigger axe, or just even a small hatchet, it will definitely come in handy for processing wood. So the main difference between bushcrafters and bushcraft preppers is bushcraft preppers are allowed to cheat, because bushcrafters are going into a forest with the aim to do things as primitively as possible and do everything by hand, whereas bushcraft preppers, they're prepping for an end of the world scenario. So collecting dryer lint from your dryer fluff, if you want to call it that, is perfect for a tinder, especially if you get some petroleum jelly, because if you cover the dryer fluff with petroleum jelly, then it will burn long and it will burn hot. It can be compressed down, and the petroleum jelly goes quite a long time as well. I would argue that this sort of tinder is better than firelighters, because potentially with all of this compressed down, there is the potential to space it all out and have more tinder than a firelighter. The thing is with the firelighter is that it burns hot straight away, whereas this might take one or two goes. So it's a double-edged sword with both sides. The firelighters are kind of bigger as well, so you can probably only carry a certain amount, whereas dryer fluff and cotton wool or anything like that you can carry a lot of and still be space efficient in your bag. So ultimately it's up to you what you choose. Personally, I carry a little bit of both, because why not? I'm a prepper after all. But it's up to you, whatever you find easier. I will say though that carrying this sort of tinder would be better for when your firelighters run out, because it's going to be a shock to the system if you're in a grid down scenario, proper survival scenario, where you run out of your firelighters and suddenly you don't know what sort of tinder would be best to light in order to try and establish your fire. So starting off with practicing with something like this would definitely benefit you. Another pro for collecting dryer lint, dryer fluff, is that it's free, as long as you've got a dryer to dry your clothes with, whereas firelighters cost money. Alright, that's enough talk now. Let's begin collecting and processing some wood. Okay, so this is exactly what we're looking for. Downed tree that's already gone down, because we don't want to take down any live trees. So this would be perfect. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to saw straight into this. The first time I'm going to saw it straight down, and then I'm going to saw it at an angle. The reason I'm doing that can be found out by watching one of our overnighter videos linked up here or up there. I don't know which way the orientation is for this video. Click on the little grey eye icon to go to that video, or it will be linked at the end of the video too. Mark explains a really good tree cutting tip that everyone should follow already. Okay, so that's the chopped log there. Something I want to demonstrate here. Even though this log has been downed in this forest for a good long while now, it's still nice and dry on the inside. And that's the thing about these dead logs. Even though it's been raining and it's been windy and cold weather, and the outside is totally wet, on the inside it's nice and dry. So don't ever look at these logs and think, oh no, they're totally waterlogged, you can't use them, we've got to use fresh wood. No, these downed dead trees are perfect for fire making. Okay, well, just got to take that bit off, but there you go. Okay, so now that we've got our log, or logs, it's important to note that these logs, they can go on the fire once the fire is established. Once it's nice and hot, and it's actually hot enough to cook a log this size. But in order to get to that stage, we need to chop this log up into smaller pieces. So that's what we're going to do now. The first thing we're going to do is cut it up into quarters. This stump here from this downed tree, I sawed off the top, and it's going to make a perfect tree cutting stump. So let's do it. So watch out, that did hit me in the leg as it bounced back. But here we go. That, rather handily, naturally cut itself into 3 pieces. So I was trying to get it to cut it in half equally, but I cut slightly too close to the edge there. So what happened is the other half was too small, and it literally just split apart. And that's how you can tell the wood is nice and dry as well. Look at that. Now that would be perfect for an open flame to take hold of the fire if it's hot enough. But we do need to make it smaller, so let's do that. We're going to save this half here for later on. So what we're doing now, we're going to make these into smaller sticks, and that is what is going to eventually establish the fire that we make from the tinder. So nice and carefully. And we want to go even smaller than that. We want to cut them up so that they're nice and thin to make certain that they do catch fire. When you've got wood like this, which is bent, and you can't just directly batten it down with your axe, just chop it in half. And there we go. It's that sort of size that we're aiming for. From one of these quarters, we've produced a number of small sticks that we can put into a teepee shape that will catch fire a lot easier than any sort of thick wood that's still covered in its bark. That's what Hollywood doesn't tell you. And the thing is, we've actually made a relatively decent size pile of small stuff. So even a log as small as the one that I started out with will provide you with enough firewood to establish a fire. Because I've only used one of these small quarters. I haven't even touched this thing yet. And this is just one log, remember? So, you can be efficient with your fire. You don't have to burn entire logs all in one go. So I figured I'd have a little bit of a sit down here, because the next part that we're moving on to is the feathering sticks. Now the feathering sticks is what we use the knife for. Right. So the idea of a feather stick is that you shave a piece of wood fine enough so that it creates super thin wood that you would think of as feathers. Okay? And those are what those feathers are what is going to catch fire easily whenever you strike your tinder and create that first initial flame, because as you'll see, the feathers will still be attached to the wood, and then when the feathers catch fire, hopefully the wood underneath catches fire too. That's why you've got to make sure that you've got a lot of feather sticks, because you want that fire to keep spreading and keep getting hotter. The idea is to make your flame as hot as possible so that it will self-establish, and then you can start putting the thicker stuff on there. A fire does not start out hot enough to put big thick logs on there. You need to build up the fire, okay? That's what Hollywood does not tell you. So here we go. I got a knife here, the Mora Companion, very popular amongst bushcrafters. Very nice and cheap as well, Mora Companion, look it up on Amazon. Perfect starter bushcraft knife. It's a Scandi grind, it's not a bevel grind like I'm used to. I've only ever used bevel grinds whenever I've tried feathering before, and Lord knows we've seen enough feathering on this channel. So this is going to be my first time using a Scandi grind knife to do feathering, and I'm hoping it's going to be easier. I'm going to use my log here as a stabilizer, and let's go. Nope. That's one thing you want to make sure of too, is that you don't accidentally shave the entire thing off of the end because you want it still attached to the wood. Now I must say, a knife with a Scandi grind is a lot easier. Even these 3 strands have been so much easier than in the past making feather sticks. Here we go, I'm going to get a closer angle for you. Yes, the Scandi grind seems to make feathering a lot easier. Now let me show you what a bevel grind looks like. Here's my EDC knife. Now, as you can see, the blade itself, the sharp bit is on the right at the bottom, and that's called a bevel. Okay, so the actual cutting part is like a small triangle at the bottom of the blade, whereas with the Scandi grind, the sharp part starts at the bottom and ends up here. I'm probably not explaining this super well. I'm not a professional with knives. I do know a little bit, but I'm probably sounding like such a fool right now. I recommend thoroughly researching the differences between grinds on knives, but I'm just saying that the bevel style knife, it's a lot harder, at least that's what I found, to do feathers rather compared to the Scandi grind. So I would thoroughly recommend getting a Scandi grind knife, and this Mora companion, I can't praise it enough, honestly. So there we go, we're making the feathers slightly wider, and as you can see they're bunching up all at the bottom here, and when this catches fire, the idea is that gets hot enough to then set the rest of the stick on fire. But we need to make the stick here thin enough so that it would actually catch fire. We've just got to have enough material to make sure that the fire gets hot enough. It seems my feathering needs a bit of work, because I should have continued at the top here, but now I've just kind of cornered myself, and now I can only really do it down here. Let's see if I can just bring it back a little bit. No. I will say something that I didn't do with this one is always make sure to start up right at the top to get nice long feathers. I'm going to try that now with this piece of wood. And another way to do it as well is to do it once that way and then once that way, so that you always have an angle to work with, because as you can see on this one, when it started getting flat here, the feathers that I made started getting flatter and flatter. So that's not what you want. You want the small thin ones like at the beginning here. There we go, and you would just continue on like that until the wood gets so thin and you've just got a nice bunch of feathers. So the plan is to have a bunch of sticks like this with feathers at the bottom, so that that will catch a light nice and easily. I just want to say here, while we're sat down here, is that earlier on I said whenever you run out of your own tinder and firelighters or whatever it is you're using to start a fire, and I said that you would have to find your own tinder, there's a little something which you can use which is a byproduct of what you had done earlier. Now, when we were sawing away, obviously that created sawdust. So if you have a tarp as part of your bugging out gear, then you can use that tarp, put it underneath the log that you're sawing, and keep the sawdust, because the sawdust will be nice and dry, and when you collect it up you can hit that with your fire steel, and that stuff will be fine enough to actually catch light. You would need a lot of it, I will say that, but with all the sawing that you'll be doing, you'll be collecting enough. And there is another thing that you can use as well. It's something which I've done a review for on this channel, which I'll post the link of up here or up there, whichever side, and that is the Smith's Tinder Maker. So it's essentially a cheese grater. You can watch a review, I go through how to use it and everything, but essentially you rub wood up against this like a cheese grater and it makes tinder for you, and that an item like this will save your life when it comes to running out of tinder later on, if you're in like a long-term SHTF survival scenario where you're out in the woods for a long time and you've expended your resources. So this piece of equipment is great to have as a backup tinder maker, as well as like I said, the byproduct of sawing logs. Just make sure to keep all of that sawdust, create sawdust with using this, and you'll have enough tinder, hopefully. And that's what you use to start your fire. So essentially, when you're collecting and processing firewood, you're going from the big stuff all the way down to the smaller stuff, but when you're building and setting your fire, you're going from the small stuff back up to the big stuff. You light your tinder, you put your feather sticks on, you put your small sticks on, and then you put your quarter logs on, and then you put your main logs on. Obviously, incrementally, as the fire gets hotter and hotter. So, why don't we give it a go? Here's some logs I prepared earlier. Just going to put them here as the base for the fire. They are a bit wet and damp, but what we're doing, we won't really need a very dry base. Okay, so what I've got here is a combination of sawdust that I made and the cotton wool and petroleum jelly. Now this should light fairly well. There you go. That's catching there pretty decently. Just going to put the feather sticks over this so that they can catch well. Okay, here we go. I'm just going to keep building it up. And the feather sticks, as you can see, are burning very nicely in there. And using that flame as it gets hotter and hotter, we'll keep putting sticks on top. And I've got my bellows here as well, so that I can blow on the inside here and get some air in there. You really cannot beat cotton balls and petroleum jelly. I mean, firelighters, they are obviously very good, but cotton balls and petroleum jelly, fantastic and very cheap. I'm going to leave a link to an article up here or over there, probably in the description actually, to an article that someone wrote about cotton balls and petroleum jelly, and it's honestly a very good read. And I urge everyone to check it out. The fire here is getting quickly established. As is tradition, the smoke is going right into my eyes. But that's okay. So this is quite a hash attempt at a teepee, but you can kind of see the workings of it. So putting the feathers at the bottom and then putting the bigger sticks like a teepee so that the fire catches a lot easier. Also it helps when it's windy, which it is at the moment, as you can see there. Don't even need the bellows for this. So as we can see here, the fire is getting a bit more established now. And keep putting some more sticks on top. And as this gets hotter and hotter, we can put the bigger stuff on there. Which, even if the logs are wet, the fire underneath will dry the logs, making it easier for the wood to catch fire. So it's always good to have the big logs on there, because if there is any moisture in them, then that moisture will be eliminated by being above the fire. Your fire will get to a point where it's hot enough that you can even put quite a moist log on there and it will still catch fire, because the fire will be hot enough. Always good to leave a hole somewhere leading to the base of the fire, because obviously the base of the fire is where the fire is coming from, at least at the start. And you want the wind to be able to go into the hole of the fire to be able to, you know, feed the fire and keep it aflame. You can see at this point the fire is pretty much established. We can just keep putting on some more of the smaller sticks just to really drive it home. We really want it to keep burning. But remember, don't plug up the holes for the wind to get into, because we need that. But you can also, in some of the areas, keep putting on the bigger stuff so that that will eventually catch fire too. That'll happen sometimes, no bother. As the fire's burning, obviously it gets smaller and smaller, so we just got to keep maintaining it, keep making sure that it stays alight. Honestly, at this point I would probably even start cooking. In a previous video that I made of the 30-pound bug out bag challenge, you might have seen that I actually held the aluminium mess tin above the fire and just cooked the food that way. So that would be possible like that. But yeah, so there you go. Basically from here you just keep adding the thicker logs on, and they will eventually catch fire just as these ones have here, and you will have your established fire. That didn't take much work, but yeah. So anyway, I'm going to end the video here. Thank you very much for watching. I really hope that it's helped you out, if you're a newbie prepper, if you're a beginner bushcrafter, in helping you to realize the type of wood that you want and how to process it properly to make a fire easily. Alrighty then, so I'm Rich with Newbie Prepping. Hopefully next time I'll be out with Mark, but stupid lockdown is happening. If you'd like to chat with us on Discord, we've got a Discord right here. If you want to subscribe, just do all of that stuff over there, tap the bell and all that. Yeah, like the video please, that would be fantastic, just to help us get us seen by a bit more people. That would be wonderful. And yeah, I sincerely hope that this video helped. Thank you very much for watching. See you again. Bye bye.